Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the extra mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now your hosts, Jackson Mummy and Megan Saya from Celebration Bar Review.
Hi, welcome back. I know. I just hit that start button without telling you, didn't I? Sometimes I do that. I see the top of the hour and I'm like, boom, got to get going. In any event, how are you?
Doing pretty well. Trying to prep for the holidays and Christmas and try and keep those expectations low because I think we're all running a bit on empty right now.
Yeah, I've had lots of calls with our students, but also with people inquiring about our course. And I sense that people are just tired and they're frustrated, and I don't know if there are other adjectives, but those two really come to mind. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, definitely. Everyone is fried right now. It's been a really long year. There's hope on the horizon, but we definitely know we've got a while to go until life gets back to normal. So yeah, I think definitely you hear me say it all the time, but to our students, I hope that everyone's giving themselves a lot of grace right now, that it's just hard. It's hard for everyone. And then for all of you who are studying for the bar, it's another crazy, stressful thing to pile on top of it. So yeah, you're not alone in it, any of you.
Yeah, and I know this sounds a little big brother-ish. We can see when you're on the site. We can see when you're studying or when you're doing practice questions or if you're watching lectures and so on. And I got to say, I am truly amazed at how consistently we've got people studying. And I want to just congratulate those of you that are really sticking to the schedule and working through it. I recognize that comes at a price, and I'm really proud of you for doing that. I know it takes a lot to do it right now. That's great, and congratulations for continuing to work towards that goal. It will be worth it when you pass. So it's been a busy week in the bar exam, as so many have this year. You want to start and bring us up to date on what's going on around the world?
Yeah, so let's start with New York because that was the major jurisdiction that released their results today. So very interesting. There's a few different things that we can talk about with New York, but let's start with their overall pass rate. It was an 84% pass rate. So obviously, Jackson, this is significantly higher. Why is that?
Because they didn't let anybody who'd failed the exam take it again this time. This is culling the herd, and it's loading the results in a way that is really, I think, disingenuous. The numbers are pretty staggering. There were 5,000 first-time takers of the New York exam, and there were, get ready for this, 146 repeaters. That's all they allowed in to take the exam. That's 0.02% of the total bar group. Now, those 146 repeaters had a 45% pass rate. That's no great surprise. That's consistent with the rest of the country, I think, right now. But when you take this pass rate and you say 84, 85%, you think, wow, that's really fabulous. But it's really skewed pretty deeply, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. New York inexplicably shut off their bar exam to most repeat takers. The 146 repeaters who were allowed to take the exam, Jackson, were these people who had failed multiple times?
No, there were one-time only failures. They had to go to a New York ABA law school. Only 34 out-of-state ABA law school failures were allowed to take the exam. No foreign repeat takers were allowed at all. No law office study. They cherry-picked really who was going to sit for the exam. And even the foreign educated LLMs that were first-time takers were so narrow, it was less than 1,000. That's a way small number than normal because they had to have taken an LLM from an ABA accredited law school and be a first-time taker. So they really limited this in such a significant way that it's hard to make any sense of it. And then it's even harder to figure out why they're continuing that process going forward because it's an online exam. What difference does it make if you've got 5,000 or 6,000 or 10,000 people? To me, I don't get that. But there are also some weird things they've done in terms of announcing how they're handling the scores. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so very interestingly, so this is, your ears should perk up if you took the bar in this past October or a September administration and you got a really high score that would allow you to go into New York. They said in their statement today, candidates who took the 200 multiple choice questions wouldn't have the reliability states got to score however they felt like scoring. But New York is saying you can transfer your passing score to New York. So if you passed in October and you are interested in being licensed in New York, I think you need to get in touch with them immediately and try and figure out if you are eligible for this transfer into New York.
Yeah, and the New York passing score was 266. So if you're in a UBE jurisdiction, you took the Plan B test and you got in that jurisdiction a number of 266 or better, then I would go ahead and apply. And I think the reason, you and I were talking about this before we went live, if you're in that situation, I would just apply, because I'm not sure this door is going to open again. It just feels like they are trying to close things down. And so if there's this possibility of getting in this way, even if you don't necessarily think you're going to practice law in New York, this may be your only shot to do it. So I think that's one big part of this situation. I know we've got some people that scored better than 266. We've got quite a few of them in UBE jurisdictions in Plan B. We didn't think New York was an opportunity because of the way they had described it. And so now I think I would go for that going forward. And then the other thing that is bizarre is what they're going to do for February. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so for the February exam, New York is going to do it online, which we knew, and they are allowing, again, which we already knew, they're allowing anyone who failed the October exam, they can take the February, so whether LLM or ABA, accredited law school in the States. But also they said that they will consider requests from graduates who took the bar exam in another state and were unsuccessful and now wish to take the New York exam. So if that's you, if you are wanting to take the New York exam and you have not been allowed to register so far because they've been very strict on who can register, you need to email a request to application@nybarexam.org. Okay. New York finally joined the 21st century here and got an email address as opposed to making you fax everything to them, which is insane because it's 2020. But they have an email address now, so you need to email them. And I would do it today. So if you are thinking you want to sit in New York in February, this is not a guarantee. They said they will consider it. My guess from the language is that they are going to probably give priority, and just what they've been doing, they will probably give priority to people who sat in October somewhere else, or the September jurisdictions. If you sat in this last go around somewhere else and failed, hopefully that's you, that you tried, even if you were unsuccessful. But either way, I think you need to email them today and try to get on that list and convince them to let you sit for the exam.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And while we can't give individualized admissions advice, I think we can say with some degree of confidence that you should try everything you can to get into this exam if you can get in. These rules are very ambiguous, and I think they've deliberately written them in such a way to give themselves the maximum flexibility to decide who they're going to let sit for the exam. I'm not expecting consistency in their decisions. I think you just have to be aggressive about it. So definitely agree about that. So I think that this is a strange situation in New York, and do what you can. If you're thinking about New York, this may be that small opening in the window. Don't know what it means for July of 2021. They've not talked about that at all. And I would be hesitant to make a prediction at this point about where we're going to go in the New York test. So there we go. So when you hear about 85% pass rates, just remember that it's a hyped up number. So
yeah. Very strange stuff happening in New York. A little confusing, not great communication. So that's why our advice, obviously, and like you said, Jackson, we can't give individualized advice, but our advice generally is definitely to get in touch if you potentially could fall into either one of those categories: petitioning to take the exam in February or a score transfer into becoming licensed in New York. You need to get in touch with them right away to try to figure out if you will be allowed to do either one of those things. All right, let's talk about some other results that came out in the past week. We got Connecticut. They had a 67.5% pass rate, which was up from 60% last July. So that's good news and still going along with the trend overall that we're seeing of these higher pass rates. Then also Georgia, they had a 68.2% pass rate for the October exam. And Jackson, this was the one that was open book, and Georgia is sticking with the open book essay exam for February.
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting. At 68%, there was some discussion, as you remember, people said, oh, it's open book, pass rates are going to soar. What didn't happen? 68% is better than you would expect in some respects. Our students did very well. We had some remarkable stories. I've just done an interview with a student. This is a great story. The student started before Celebration Bar Review and got a 114 on the Georgia bar. They didn't even score that student's essays. And on this pass test, got a 278. So I don't know, what's that math? 64 points increase. And so I think that for people who followed our advice about how to study for this exam and prepare for the exam, results were really very good. But I think it also is instructive that an open book exam didn't suddenly make it a no-brainer. You just showed up and read out of the book. It is what we've been saying all along. The test is not about the law you can recite or memorize or even look up in a book. It's how you use it.
Yeah, definitely. I just think this is the showing, it's the proof in the pudding for what you've been saying, Jackson, for decades, which is that it's not really just about knowing the law. If it were just memorizing the law, then an open book test, you'd see 80, 90% pass rate. Look up the black letter law. There you go. No problem. But yeah, certainly 68% would indicate that there's a little bit more to it than that.
Yeah. There's one thing I want to point out, and it happened to a student in Georgia, but I think it could happen elsewhere, and I think it's a good lesson. And that is that there was a student who took the Georgia bar, not with us, but then was not successful and filed and had accommodations, testing accommodations. And the day the results came out, this individual contacted Georgia and said, I want to apply for accommodations. And they said, whoops, too late. The accommodations deadline was several weeks ago. And the student, I think, reasonably said, wait, I just got my results. And the examiner said, doesn't matter. You had to apply for accommodations by the accommodations date, regardless of knowing your results out of this exam. I would just use that as a cautionary tale that if you are getting any kind of accommodations, watch those deadlines in your jurisdiction and make sure you hit those deadlines regardless of whether or not your results yet. Because apparently, at least in Georgia, even after an appeal, this was absolutely something they weren't going to change. I thought that was crazy, actually, but there you go. So I would say this in particular now to California bar takers waiting on results. You got to hit those deadlines regardless of whether your results, and New Jersey and a couple of other states that we still don't have results in. So be careful about those deadlines.
Yeah, definitely. All right, and let's talk about Texas. So they released the October exam results. So you'll remember Texas had a September exam in person in the individual hotel rooms, and then they had the online October exam. So really interesting, and I would love to get your take, Jackson, on what you think happened here. Texas October results, it was a 60% pass rate. That's way down from the September 9th through 10th exam. It was 77% pass rate. So what do you think happened there? Why the gigantic disparity between the two test dates?
Yeah, I think, first of all, the easy answer would be, well, it went online, but I don't think that's what happened. Remember that there were two different forms of the exam. In the September exam, there were 6 essays. There were 200 multiple choice questions, and there were 2 MPTs. Then in October, they went to 12 essays online, 1 MPT, and 100 multiple choice questions. And that jiggering of the balance of questions, I think, is what threw it off. I think it caused people having to write more essays and getting fewer multiple choice questions hurt the pass numbers significantly. And I thought that this was a wonderful in the sense of being a numbers geek. It was very instructive to me, and I'm going to look forward to digging into the numbers in more depth as they start to be released from Texas. But I think it's a pretty clear indication that when you don't give 200 questions in the MBE, your test results go berserk. They can go wildly one direction or the other because the test just isn't reliable. And we talked about this last week. The scoring appeared to be just a doubling of the first 100 multiple choice questions, which really begs the point, why bother to give the second 100 questions if you're just going to double up what you did on the first 100? And I think in Texas, we saw it made a difference. When you had 200 questions, that made a difference. When you had 6 essays versus 12 essays, it made a difference. And I don't think the online component is what caused these numbers to break. What do you think?
Oh, no. Yeah, I definitely agree. There's no meaningful difference in Texas between who took which exam. So it was really pretty much the same makeup of students and applicants. It was less than a month apart, and just a difference in some cases of people who felt more comfortable taking it in person versus people who felt more comfortable maybe for, health reasons to take it online. But really nothing that should have accounted for such a dramatic difference in the scores. This wasn't a situation where you had significantly more repeat takers in the second group. So of course the pass rate was lower, like nothing like that. So yeah, definitely. It's really good insight.
And ultimately now Texas is part of the UBE. So if you're one of the people that took the Texas bar exam, you've got your pass or fail result, but now throw it all away because we start all over again with UBE. Really strange. How many different forms of one exam do you have to take, right?
Yeah, definitely. All right. One last note about results. So normally New Jersey tends to follow around with New York results being released, but unfortunately there's a big snowstorm hitting New Jersey. So all of the government offices and buildings have been closed. I think at 1:00 Eastern today, the governor shut everything down, sent everyone home. So that means there may be a bit of a delay in the New Jersey results. So obviously, if you are in the New Jersey or that New England area, we hope that you stay safe, stay home if you can, enjoy the snow. I heard they're giving some places in the country, some school districts are giving snow days to kids, even though they're online, because it just felt like, gosh, like these kids need some extra joy. So I hope that it's a nice little snowstorm and not anything that causes you to lose power or be in danger. But just know that if you're waiting on results in New Jersey, they might be a little bit longer after New York than you would normally see.
Yeah, I think we're down to probably about 10 states or so now that have not released results. Obviously, the big one being California, but we've got some smaller states that have not released results. So we'll keep an eye out for that and see what happens. But I think the general trend across the country was that pass rates were better than would have been expected by most of the pundits, although I'm just going to pat us on the back. We said it back in March, this would be a better test for people, and definitely agree. I know we're going to talk a little bit about February 2021, but I firmly believe that if you can sit for that February test, I know it takes an enormous reserve of energy to do it right now, but that test is going to be a very passable test because of the mix of people sitting for the exam. Interesting to see how these numbers have played out. Definitely.
All right, let's talk about some administrative questions, and I'll start with one about New Jersey since we were just talking about that. All right, the New Jersey Board of Bar Examiners has just provided me with information regarding acknowledgement package and fingerprint instructions. I have a query regarding requirements for passing. What's the difference between phase 1, bar examiners and readers, and phase 2, readers? Does it mean that a passing score is 272?
A lot of jurisdictions have a two-phased reading for people that are close to the passing number. And essentially what New Jersey is saying is they start with these bar readers. They're people that are not experts in the bar exam. They're not professors. They're people who need a side hustle and they've passed a bar somewhere, someplace. And for example, in California, these bar readers get paid $3.25 a book. So not a lot of money at all. And the bar reader grades their essays. And then if your score is in a certain range, I think in New Jersey, it's 266 to something, 272, then they look at that and they say, okay, based on that, let's have the bar examiners look at your work as well. And we do a second grade and then we come in. The passing score in New Jersey is 266. It's not 272. I think what they're talking about is that if you are in this range of scores, you're going to get a second read. And they could read you up or read you down. I wouldn't worry about it as a bar taker right now. There's nothing you can do about it. It's just the scoring system. Some states give more information about their scoring system than others. This is really just pulling back the window a little bit to let you know that in this particular state, and they're not alone, there's two levels of reading that can happen for a small number of people, and really a small number of people. The best approach is blow past the passing score, and then it's a moot point. But if you're just under or just over, you're probably going to have a second read. And sometimes that second read pulls you under the passing score, unfortunately.
I saw you already gave me lots of MBE questions. Should I buy any other MBE questions online, like from Adaptabar?
No, absolutely not. There are only about 2,100 license questions in the universe. We have every one of them. Any other questions are unlicensed, made-up questions. And I got to tell you, unlicensed, made-up questions are very sketchy. It's very hard to do. We have to do it in Florida, and it's hard, Megan. It is hard to write questions, and we're trying to write bad questions. It's hard to do. Maybe it's harder to do bad questions. Anyway, the reality is when you go out to buy more questions, if you're buying them from a company that's got licensed questions, you're seeing the same question, but our answer explanations, I think, are vastly superior. Our course started as SMH Bar Review in 1970 at Harvard Law School, and so this is the creepy part. We're 50 years old. I mean, 50 years are these questions and the materials. So the genesis is pretty well established. I know some people like to think and come up with their own hypotheticals. Someone today gave me a hypothetical from a movie, which is fascinating, but we're not interested in movie hypotheticals. We're interested in bar exam questions. And so you should be using the bar exam questions and the answer explanations that we've written to those questions. And that is more than enough for you. You don't need to do 4,000 MBEs to pass the exam. That is mythology. What you need to do is follow the approach that we've taken, and then you're going to see these big jumps in scores. And I'll say, again, we've had some students. I mentioned one student in Georgia who made their score jump. We have a student, and I don't know if she's on the call today. What was the jump in score? How many points? It was 60 plus scale points on the UBE. Holy cow, are you kidding me? Congratulations. That is, I can hardly wait to do that interview, really. And I know Tamara worked with you, Megan, but there's plenty of material there. You can make the score go up. So don't think it's by going out and getting more questions. And I'm not trying to take money out of Adaptabar's pocket, not that they'd miss it, but it's just not necessary. And we've got everything you need to be successful.
Yeah. Jackson, North Carolina is doing a virtual exam for February 2021. Will you please post for us first-time virtual takers a bit of calming Jackson wisdom virtual exam?
By virtual, I think you mean online.
Online, yeah.
Yeah. In the UBE course, you and I have done several videos about online test taking for essays, online test taking for performance tests, and online test taking for the MBE. I would really encourage you to go back through all of those. The other thing that I think might be helpful, and I think Tanya's one of the people that probably has done this, is to go through our Abundance Masterclass. Abundance for Bar Study is designed to help you calm and focus and get the most out of your studies. So whether it's finding something online or knowing how far to study or just being anxious about online test taking, whatever those things are, I think that you'll find you can master them pretty easily once you master your emotions and you understand how you are approaching this process. Abundance for Bar Study is a 90-minute masterclass. If you've been through it, you're able to take it over and over again. It's on demand. There's a great workbook that comes with it. And I think it's one of the best tools that we've ever offered to people. And I think during this holiday season is a great time to go through it if you haven't done it. If you've done it previously, the season is probably a good time to come back and revisit it. 90 minutes that you spend here will save you so much in the way of additional needless work, I think. And so I would really encourage you to take this course. I think you can make a big difference. So that would be my response. I don't have better material than what I put in the master class. So there you go.
Great. If I have to choose between mind maps and photo reading, which one would be the better choice?
That's a really good question. I thought about it a lot, and my answer is photo reading, and I'll tell you why. I think photo reading is the fundamental key to success, particularly for repeat bar takers, because it changes the paradigm of the way you study. Everything happens differently when you're a photo reader. You're getting through the material more times. You're being more selectively intuitive in answering questions, essays, and multiple choice. You're starting to use mind mapping anyway. It's built into the photo reading course. We've got some mind mapping. And so I think photo reading gives you the foundational piece. And therefore, I think that's where I would start. Now, if you have photo reading for the bar exam, we're going to give you a whole range of bonuses and extras, additional resources and webinars and so on. Then I would look at down the road, going ahead and adding bar maps as you get further along in your studies. Bar maps is a series of 3 different items put together. It is the interactive video lectures with timestamps so you can find the specific subject you're looking for or the part of the subject. And then you have pre-prepared mind maps down to 2 levels that we've created for you for every subject, which is an enormous time saver because we've taken the grunt work out. We've created the superstructure there. And then you can go ahead and fill it in. You can go from there. And then we added the fast finish audio lectures recently, which are the high-speed audio soundtracks of the subject lectures. For example, today I was working with a student who was writing a property essay, and he was having trouble with easements, which is not uncommon. And I said, you know what you ought to do? He has bar maps. I said, go to your bar maps for property, find the easements section of the lecture and just focus on that, photo read that because he's a photo reader, photo read your entire outline, then go to the bar maps, find the easement section in the lecture, just watch that, which will be like 12 minutes long. So it's really focused. Then go to the mind map that we created in property down in the second level, and you'll see where easements are, and then you can expand that out. And then go ahead and go to the fast finish audio for property, and you can get through that lecture in an hour and a half for each part of property. And that's how you consolidate your understanding of a particular subject. That's a really long way of saying, I think you start with photo reading, and then ultimately, I think you ought to consider bar maps. If you've not looked at it, click on the link and just check out the order page. It's got a lot of information, some samples of how it looks and works. And I think it's, again, one of those products that really enhances your study. So you want to add anything to that?
I think that was great. I think the only thing I would say is remember that I'm assuming this question is really about like spending the money and which is the better purchase. You can do mind maps for free now, and I think you should. The bar maps has different advantages to it, but don't let it deter you if you can't or don't want to purchase something now. Please do mind maps. So mind maps is just, you can do it on the computer, you can do it with a piece of paper. It just is that you have to start from obviously a blank page. That's fine. But definitely when I first read this question, I was like, do both. Why would you not? Because I'm like the mind map. Yeah, I love them. So definitely, please do mind maps no matter what else you're doing in the course.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
All right, question. One of the responses I'm getting from private tutors is that the UBE itself is structured to be written in IRAC rather than FLA, and that's how it's graded. Do you agree with that statement? If not, why not? I'm trying to see if I need to adjust my writing back to IRAC from FLA to improve my essay scores.
Yeah, I touched on this really briefly last week, but I wanted to go in a little more depth. I don't agree with that statement at all. I cannot find a statement from a single bar examiner jurisdiction anywhere in the country. I researched it this week. I could not find one anywhere that said this is an issue spotting jurisdiction and we've written these questions as issue spotters. I went back through the National Conference of Bar Examiners information that we've got, and they're the people that write the tests. And I've looked at the drafter point sheets, which are the sheets that they give to the graders. None of those sheets, I was able to do a digital scan, which is wonderful. You do a word search, and I look for issue spotting. Not a single instruction to a bar examiner grader says issue spotting. There is nothing about the structure of a UBE essay that is issue spotting. In fact, it's far from it. They ask very specific questions. If you look at the trend line in UBE essays, when they first started writing them, they were a little more broad and general. Today, they're almost all numbered questions, right? You've got the question, and then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 calls of the question, which are very specific. And the reason for a specific call to the question is to avoid issue spotting. If we're interested in whether or not there was offer in a contract problem, we would just talk about offer and not have to talk about offer and acceptance and consideration and so on. These are things we don't need as issue spotters. And so the reality is that the examiners know you don't need all of that. And as a result, they ask these very specific questions. And I think it's important to keep in mind that is the process that's going on. And to write then in this FLA method that we use, which is much more focused and works that way. Now, the reason that tutors tell you issue spotting is because that's all they know. That's what they learned in law school. They've never been through a course like ours. They're not aware of anything else. And so they bought into that mythology that issue spotting is the way to go. So that's what I would see in that. And I don't think you should be doing that. I think when I see the results that we've gotten out across the country, Florida, Georgia, UBE, we're seeing people with big jumps in scores who came to us from the big box courses where they've been issue spotters and now they're writing jumps. And when we interview them, and we've got some great interviews that we've just put up, what they say consistently is, I followed the writing system. If you haven't seen the interview I did with Theo this week in Florida, check it out, even if you're not a Florida student, because Theo is one of those guys. He raised his score 17 points to pass in Florida. And he talks about following the writing system and photo reading, and those things changed it for him. So I feel pretty strongly about this, and we don't think that's a particularly strong methodology to view. Do you want to add to that? Because I know you teach a lot of writing, obviously, as well, and have some thoughts about it.
Yeah, I know it's scary because it's obviously we're the only people who teach this writing style. So I get that. It is really scary to swim upstream, because you just look around you and you say, everyone else around me is doing IRAC. And so it must be that you have to do IRAC. But here's the thing. Many thousands of people write IRAC and fail. I don't think the writing IRAC makes you pass or makes you fail. It's just one way to write it. And for many people, they're not successful when they do it that way. Okay. With FLA, what I would say is that you have to be committed to it. That's true with anything. People try to sometimes keep one toe in this pool and one toe in this pool, all that you just land on your face, right? Sure. So you just have to jump in, pick a pool and jump in. And obviously we really deeply believe that FLA is an easier way for you to write. And when done correctly is also an easier essay for the examiners to grade, and gets them to follow your logic clearly, simply, concisely. They can see your work all the way through. And then by the end of it, they understand what you're saying, can see that you've demonstrated that you know what you're talking about. We obviously believe in it very deeply. I did FLA in California, first time passed. So, this is everyone who works for Celebration Bar Review in anything that is working with students other than our lovely fairy godmother, June. They're all attorneys who took Celebration Bar Review, used FLA, and passed. So we didn't just make it up.
I made it up many years ago, but over the
we didn't just we haven't just made up like, I don't know, maybe this will work. We'll give it a shot. And we've certainly refined it and made it, I think, over the years, easier and simpler for people to understand. That's a huge part of the personal writing workshop is in the work that I did with students at boot camp, was able to refine down how do we best explain FLA and how to do it to students, because it's new when we recognize that it's new. And so that's a huge piece of the personal writing workshop, is really like distilling down, here's what it is, here's why it works, here's how you implement it, like really clearly, here's how you implement it, and then practicing that. Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those things that can feel really scary, but it's that if for many of you, you came to us because you had been trying IRAC and it failed, it didn't work. And for some of you, it didn't work a lot. You weren't even close, or you keep trying over and over again and it wasn't working. And so I think to that, I just always say, what's the harm in trying something new that does have a really great success rate? What's the harm? You've tried IRAC. There's clearly nothing magical about IRAC that makes you pass. Let's give this a shot. I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find it fascinating that there are these interesting justifications for staying with stuff like IRAC writing or not using licensed questions. Wow, people are very creative, aren't they, out there?
No, and that makes sense. That's human nature. It's the devil. It might not have worked, but it's familiar and comfortable. And it feels really scary to take a step and try something new.
Yeah, it's the stinky diaper approach. It's warm and smelly, but it's mine. So there you go. So maybe it's time for a diaper change.
All right. Last question. You touched on this briefly at the beginning, Jackson. So let's talk a little bit more about it. We get this question a lot. Should I take the February 2021 exam, or would it be better to defer until July when things may be more settled?
Yeah, this is the $1 million question right now. And I think the $1 million answer is take the February 2021 exam. And here's why. There are a number of people who were first-time takers in states like New York, Georgia, California to come, Florida, who did not pass. And these people expected to pass. And then they got their results way later than normal. and they don't have enough time to prepare, and they weren't preparing in advance of the results coming out. And for many of them, the shock of failing and the ability to get themselves emotionally recalibrated and back in and studying for February is going to be too great. As a result, substantial numbers of those people will not sit in February as they normally would have, and they will jump to July of 2021. What that means is, in most states, there is an informal quota system. There are a certain number of seats that are going to go to repeat bar takers. We know that from looking at the numbers year after year. It's more than coincidence, right? It's within 25 people of repeat bar takers, that same number of people pass and fail every exam. And so if there are fewer people competing for those repeat bar taker seats, then you're way better off if you're a repeat bar taker. Now, if you're a first-time bar taker, it doesn't matter. If you've been studying, you should sit for the February exam. If you haven't been studying, well, you got to figure it out right now. You need about 30 hours a week from today to be ready for the February exam. If you can do that, sit for the exam. If you can't do it and you got to go to July, okay, you go to July. But if you're a repeat bar taker, I cannot emphasize enough, this is going to be a gaping hole of opportunity for you, because so many repeat bar takers that you would have been competing against are now out of the system because they just didn't have enough time. I also think, and you can speak to this as well, Megan, there are people that are scared of online exams, rightfully or wrongfully, they're just scared of them. And so I know there are people that are waiting for July because they think somehow it's going to go back to an in-person exam. What's your view? Are we going to put the genie back in the bottle?
Yeah, I think it's really hard. The analogy I use with my kids all the time is trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube, which I use because, goodness, if you could see their bathroom, it's massive amounts of toothpaste that end up all over the place every morning and evening. But yeah, I think it's going to be hard to go backwards. That's not to say it's definitely not going to happen. I'm sure jurisdiction by jurisdiction will change. This was clearly the direction that it was moving in anyway. It was just on a much longer timeline. There's not great justifications now. The NCBE has been touting how great the online exam went. New York, we just saw in their press release touting how great the online exam was. I think it's really hard to do all that and then turn around and say, no, we really want to force you all to come and sit in a room. You look at things like the GMAT to get into business school, it has been online for years. There are all of these examinations that they're online already. And I think that the bar exam was a bit behind the times with this. I don't know. I certainly wouldn't be holding my breath and waiting for it to go back to being in person. That may happen. It may not happen in your jurisdiction. It may only stay that way for people with accommodations. So I think that there's so many reasons to just do it in February if you are able. And I just think that there are a lot of reasons to procrastinate, but they're not good reasons. So if you're able to do it in February, you really should.
Yeah, and no doubt, this holiday season is tough. I don't know about for other people, it feels weirdly unholiday. And certainly if you've been studying through that fall season in 2020, and now you're into this, and we're in the pandemic, and it's just dragging on. And if this feels bad in December, I can't imagine what January is going to feel like. And so it's hard. But I also believe that the rewards will come to the people that persevere through the hard stuff. And I think if you can hang on, if you can wait at the hardest moment, Harriet Beecher Stowe said, that's just the moment when the tide turns, when it seems like all is lost. This is the time to stay there and hang in and go through. We were accurate in predicting that this would be a series of good results through the 2020 exams. I firmly believe the February 2021 will be even better for repeat bar takers. And so I want to leave you with that thought as we take a couple of weeks off now, that if you're wavering about this, please think long and hard before you bail on the February test. This could be your best opportunity, and hang on just a little bit longer. Let the tide turn and don't give up. Don't be afraid. It's going to work out. I just want to say to everybody, I hope that you do have a safe and healthy holiday. I know that the holidays will feel very different for us, for you, Megan, for sure. And we know that it's a strange time, and we care very much about how you're all doing as people as well as students. Appreciate all the kindness that you send our way to all of us, June and Megan and me, the entire staff. And so thank you for that. You are all a blessing to us. and we're very honored to be part of the journey. For those of you still waiting for results, good luck. We will be back to you before the California results come out. There you go. Any last thoughts that you've got, Megan, before we wrap up for 2020?
No, happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I hope everybody stays safe and healthy and keep studying, keep going, push through, and then take a little time off to celebrate and be with your family, but don't stop, okay? Don't stop.
There you go. All right, everybody. Thanks for being with us. Great to have all of you here. We'll see you in 2021, and let's hope it's a much better year. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening and watching the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at celebrationbarreview.com.